Okay, well, it's 6 o'clock. We've been told that the audio is going in and out occasionally. We're not sure why. We've actually moved everything up into a new studio, as you can see. Really nice background. Better. And new chairs. So it started with tonight's show. Tonight we have Nate Young, and he is the Director of Sustainability and Business Analysis. Nisha's addition to his title. And he also got an MBA here at Portland State and has gone on to fame and fortune at Hopworks. So, and as many of you probably know who are from this area, Hopworks, I think, has the highest production of any of the single site breweries. They have an additional site now up on Williams, but they were #1 on the Brewers Association Brewpub production levels last year in the U.S. So they're doing incredibly well. Great business, great strategy. Worked there for a year and a half? 2 years. 2 years. So really exciting place. We're gonna, we're trying to get some internships there too, because I think it's one of the best businesses. It's a great example of a business to see. So why don't we start off, Nate? We do have one question from a student that we'll get to later, but I posted it up high so I wouldn't forget that student. So when we start the question part, you have to remember to go back and get that student's question.
And I'll try to touch a little bit on it as we go.
Yeah, I think Nate's already read the one question that got posted in advance. So let's take it away, Nate.
Great, thanks, Melly. Thanks for having me out, and hi, students. This is my first time in an online video class, so forgive me if I get wowed by the technology. Yeah, as Melly said, I'm the Director of Sustainability and Business Analysis at Hopworks. I started at Hopworks in May of 2012. And that was a half-time job as a contractor managing sustainability for them. It got to the point, so I'll get into this a little more, but that Christian, the owner, decided that he didn't have the time and resources really to manage sustainability to the point he felt it needed to be for a brewery that has as its mission been. So coming up next is the mission for for Hopworks. Mission to produce world-class beer and food as sustainably as possible. So as you can probably imagine, we try to treat sustainability pretty well and really attend to it across the whole business. So Christian wanted to bring somebody in to help backstop his efforts in sustainability. Come about a year and a half later, I successfully argued that they should bring me on full-time. And have been there full-time since. I did add not sustainability time when I came on full-time. That's the business analysis portion of my title, really backstopping the business and finance function for Hopworks. As Noah said, I've got an MBA, so it made some sense for me to do the sort of data analysis portion. I was able to create the very first budget that we had in sort of comprehensive fashion. Obviously, people have done budgets before, but really putting a whole company budget together was one of my first full-time gigs there in the fall last year. So that was a good way to get to know the company from the inside out. So yeah, let's go ahead and click through. So just going to give you a quick overview of what Hopworks is about for those of you that don't know it. And then, as is the fashion, I guess we'll jump into Q&A for the last majority of the class. So Hopworks was founded in 2007. This is a picture of Christian, the owner. He had been brewing in town for a few years already, most recently at Laurelwood. And he took the red beer that he made at Laurelwood. It was the first organic beer that he made that was all organic. And he went to GABF in 2006, I believe, and won a gold medal. Not in an organic category, but just against a number of other red beers. And that really confirmed to him that organic beer could really compete on an even playing field with conventionally grown, obviously, supplies and hops and butter and so on. So he struck out on his own shortly after and created this brewery. So we have a large brewery and restaurant on Southeast Powell here in Portland. And as Mike said, we've got the BB402 Brewpub on North Williams. No production there, just selling our beer and some sandwiches and a shortened menu from what we have on the Southeast Powell location. We have about 115 employees, as you can see there. The majority of them are restaurant employees, 15, 25, 30 total between the brewers and the admin function for the whole company. And one of the features of Hopworks that I am proud of is that we really do provide a lot of community support in donations, in kegs, in sponsorship of events and teams and that sort of stuff. So like Bicycle Transportation Association, Friendly Trees, Troy, and that's kind of a very small snapshot of the over 80 organizations that we helped support in the last couple of years. So selling general and administrative.
Let me, people are saying that there's audio, and everybody thinks I need to turn off the mic. Sorting itself out. Sounds spotty. Let me just check the mic for a sec. Okay, how about now? Sound better? Seem fine for you? All right, let's see how it goes.
All right, yes, we're going to move along. So we like to think that our beer is really good and the organization is really good. And we have been, we've received some accolades that show that sentiment. Listed some of those. Lots of beer medals, lots of organizational awards. I'm particularly proud, of course, of remaining for the last few years in the top 100 green companies in Oregon. I think we ranked 27, 37, something like that last year. That list comes out here in just a couple more months, so cross my fingers, hopefully we improve on that number this year. But yeah, we're plugging along and doing very well. Let's go ahead and So a little bit more about what sustainability looks like at Hopworks. We kind of like to joke about or speak about our Hopworks High Five. These are the five areas that we really focus on in sustainability. So certified organic, all of our beers, or the vast majority of our beers, are 100% certified organic. There is a change. If any of you are interested in organic, yeast is going to be considered or going to be required to be organic. And what that means is that the media that Y Yeast is our provider out there in Hood River is going to have to come up with an organically certified media to grow their yeast in. We've been working on, and I believe that starts in January of 2015. So we've got a year to sort it out, but we will be plugging along and maintaining that certification. We also do support some transitional crops. So some of the beer that we sell out of our pubs will not technically be certified organic because we feel it's important that if we're gonna try and remain organic, we should also support our farmers during that terrible transition period of about 3 years when they have to treat their crops organically, but they can't command the premium in price. So we'll sort of split the difference or somewhere along there in terms of what we pay those farmers for that transitional crop in order to help ease that transition period. Building green, this is something that's really important, and as far as the question that Jay asked ahead of time, this is the major price premium for being a sustainable company that we have made so far, and that's really considering the building that we're in should start green should start as a very efficiently operating building. So we bought a used building, we gutted it, and we built a big pile in the back lot that we have since pulled the vast, not the majority, but an awful lot of materials to rebuild our pub inside, as well as some of the brewery equipment. So we use reclaimed lumber, we use some reclaimed other materials for building out the bar. And so you'll find things like boiler pipe as the step stool at the bar. You'll find a lot of reclaimed lumber in all the booths and all the seats and some of that stuff. There was even a big vault that we kicked the door open and turned into a pretty interesting little seating area in that southeast Powell. And then at the Bike Bar Pub, we treated it the same way. It's in a building. We leased the space, so we have a little less control, but we sought out a building that was designed to meet net zero energy and water. They have not completed the commissioning, so I can't tell you whether or not the building is actually performing that way, but we felt pretty good about moving into that space where it's really efficiently heated and cooled. They actually, in the lobby, it's a mixed-use building, so in the apartment building side, there's a big monitor where they actually show the electricity and water and natural gas, just electricity and water consumption of every unit and sort of gamify it so that if unit 201 is doing better than 301, it can become some sort of a contest and encourage people to be a little more efficient in their powering capabilities. So number 3, carbon and water neutral. We do our best to be as efficient as possible. Obviously, the first best way to lower your carbon footprint or your water footprint is to not use the energy or the water in the first place. And we do a lot of that. I'll touch on that probably later on. But we do buy 100% of carbon offsets. We have a footprint done by Clear Sky Climate Solutions out of Montana, and we purchase offsets according to their footprint. And then we buy water offsets from Bonneville Environmental Foundation that is equivalent to slightly more is what we shoot for of our annual consumption in the brewery as well as both restaurants. Questions about those offset programs if you're interested in those. And then efficiently powered. So as I said, we are as efficient as possible in the consumption at the brewery and the restaurants, but then we also focus on, or we also pay the premium for green power. So Portland General Electric has renewable energy credits related to purchasing, but for wind power and Pacific Power is what Cal uses for electricity. We also buy the offsets from them in order to encourage that renewable energy power to feed into the in the first place. And then number 5 is the Zero Waste Initiative. Industry standard that we certainly follow is to send our spent grain to a farmer, and we do that down here in the Willamette Valley. Conveniently, we also buy milk from the same co-op that we send our grain to, so we have a little bit of a closed loop. We're proud of that fact. And within the restaurants, we shoot for less than 10% of waste goes to landfill, and right now we're sitting around 11%. If you throw the spent grain into the collection, as you may have seen, Sierra Nevada got some kudos for being zero waste certified. Our waste diversion is about 99.97%. So, the spent grain dwarfs everything else. And I'd like to pay attention to the stuff we have more effect on, and so I look more at that 89% number. So,
Bob wants to know what this is.
Yeah, so
Organic milk.
Yeah, exactly. It goes to a dairy farmer down in the Willamette Valley. We basically put it into a big 4-foot by 4-foot tote, and the farmer comes up a couple of times a week with a big flatbed, and we load them on with our forklift, and he brings back empty tubs when he does the return trip. So it's pretty easy for us, and it's basically completely hands off. Once we dump the ladder time, it goes into
Thing of that the new FDA regulations around spent grain. Probably some of you are following.
I am not aware of any new regulations. I'm sure.
I think it's mostly to do with selling the spent grain. I think if you give it away, you're not going to face the problem. It falls under animal feed. There's pending regulation if you sell spent grain. grain. You guys can say you're trading it.
Right. Down the road.
Yeah, the way from because it's Organic Valley, it's probably Organic Valley Farmer, which you probably all know is a national co-op in the U.S. Organic dairy. There was one question: does Christian sign the checks in the same font? Good one, Brian.
He definitely has a very strong aesthetic that permeates throughout everything that we do with the brand. And so I haven't seen his autograph does not look like Red October, which is the font we use, but it is pretty consistent. And you know, Bruce, our marketing guy, has done a really good job of keeping that from getting dusty. If you overuse that Red October font or some of the other highlights that you know any good brand has, it can get old. But we try to keep it fresh. You know, some of the labels on our cans, the Rise Up Red label got a pretty major overhaul this year. We changed packaging. We try to just make sure we're doing the freshest opportunity that we can.
John's saying if you're trying to make flour or baked goods out of the spent grain, are there hassles? So far, there haven't been. I need to look closely at these new potential FDA regulations to see what they say. Mostly been targeting the animal feeding industry. For those people who can sell their grain, it would apply to them.
So just a few more things about sustainability. One of the things that we put out whenever we have events outside, we do a big event called like the Beer Fest every summer. It's in the end of September this year. You should all come out for it. It's a pretty fun time. We get bands and sort of stuff. It also happens. And so we are pretty transparent about being a landfill-free zone. So we use compostable cups if we have to use anything solid. Generally, we give out pint glasses, and that's what we serve the beer in at the event. Events like it carry come hour 6 of that beer fest, but so it goes. It's worth the trade-off. We don't really think we want to fill 3 or 4 dumpsters with a compostable cup, so we go that route. And we do waste sort kiosks and things like that, so that we hope that we're training our customers that compost is a way to go. We did not get that from BEF. We did it through the vendor that helps put on the Bike to Beer Fest event. We chose that vendor because they're pretty good at that. So eutrophication, I've heard some folks from the deep green sustainability, the geekier people than me, but eutrophication is process that happens when you add certain things. Nitrogen is a big one that allows things like algae blooms to happen that basically take the oxygen out of the water, and especially it's a big problem in the ocean. So every once in a while in the news you'll hear about big fish die-offs, and a lot of times that's due to eutrophication is the fancy word they'll use, but it's that the water was completely devoid of oxygen, and so fish or other organisms were unable to breathe. And a lot of the sort of deep green people are saying that eutrophication is going to be the next big thing that companies are going to have to start paying attention to. As you dump wastewater, breweries do this all the time, biological oxygen at demand. The PODs is something the city of Portland and a lot of other cities charge through the nose for, because it's very difficult for treatment systems to treat. It requires a more robust system at that wastewater treatment plant. And the reason is because you get organisms that while they're processing the wastewater, they use up a lot of oxygen, and you can basically dead them in lakes and rivers. The layman's version of education. So the transparent information, we participated in a life cycle assessment of our beer. I believe we did a batch of IPA. And the little image there in the middle is just a screenshot of some of the results of that LCA. We think it's pretty important to look at full system footprints, and so there's obviously a lot of people know about carbon footprint, but there's this LCA did I think it was hectares of land provided to make a pint of beer. It requires from the full life cycle, about 5 pints to produce a pint of water. We're on the order of about 3 pints just in our facility. Yeah, so under a kilogram of CO2 equivalents per pint. And that's, that's fairly average for the life cycle assessment that this company did. I often make the point that organic sometimes gets penalized because of the way it's produced, and there's not academic studies that have shown the benefit in terms of carbon footprint or some of the other life cycle assessment metrics. So if anything, I would say that our footprint looks a little bit lower, but if you were to ask a farmer, they would probably argue that our organic eyes are better for the system when done with the eye towards creating a good system. So another initiative we have is the Do What You Can. We'd like to, again, encourage our customers to join us in being a better option or thinking about sustainability and everything that we do. So, we put it on our labels, we put it on our website. There's a tab on our website where folks can go and get their top 10 list of things that you can do at home to reduce your environmental footprint. We do try to sort of nudge people into joining us on the sustainability path. Especially with a brand that has a loyal following, we may as well use it. And then I mentioned some of the community support efforts.
Good question.
Yeah.
From Eric, how are you into our usage? 3 to 1 is great.
3 to 1 is pretty good, yes. The best I've ever seen was out of Manhattan-Bush, a mega factory there, I think 2.7, something like that. But yeah, 3 to 1 is pretty good, especially at our small scale. The main way that water gets wasted is in single pass cooling. So going from the kettle to the fermenter, if you're using cold water that gets dumped down the drain, that's gonna basically double your water consumption because you get about 1 degree to 1 degree cooling process. So we've got a pretty efficient heat exchanger that preheats the water we're going to use in our process. Exactly, yeah. We absolutely do. We preheat that water, it goes into our big hot liquor tank that then is bumped up the last bit of a way to 180 degrees. We don't get it in the heat exchanger up to 180. There's only a little bit further.
But I should mention that on a typical brew day, they do 4 brews back to back.
Yeah.
So each brewer does 2 brews. It's pretty crazy, but that's, they're using all the water right away that, they've created from the previous cycle.
Yeah.
It's very efficient.
It's really the first batch of the day that we sometimes have to add fresh hot water or fresh cold water and then heat that up. But we do our best to top off that hot liquor tank at the end of the day, again, with the heat exchanger so that we're not losing that paid for energy, I guess I should say. Pretty well insulated hot water tank. So, the obvious question that I would ask myself if I was sitting in your seat is, but what do you actually do? What does my job on a daily basis look like? And so just a couple of slides here to give you an idea of how I spend my day. Some of it is maintenance of our tracking system. So, on a monthly basis, we get a couple dozen utility bills and water bills and that sort of stuff. So that all goes into a giant spreadsheet that I've mapped all the way back from 2007. And then I have built out intensity metrics. So that's the gallons of water per gallon of beer, therms of gas per barrel, and kilowatt hours per barrel. And I'm also very proud, Tom, our head brewer, at the end of 2012, instituted a policy where the line level brewers have a portion of their bonus comp tied to continuous improvement on those 3 metrics. So number one, that means that you have to be very confident that you're not sharing a water meter with the kitchen, for instance, because then they have no incentive to improve if they know that if the kitchen has a bad day or has a leak, it's going to negatively affect their bonus comp. But one of the things I have done is broken apart our natural gas meter that was previously shared with the kitchen, so that we're really talking about just brewery usage when we look at that. So that's a portion of my time. Definitely do a good deal of research and I'm learning a lot about energy engineering in terms of how efficient a steam boiler would be and what improvements we could expect to get from that over our 1997 model million BTU straight line boiler that is wildly inefficient. I shouldn't say that. It's about as good as it came in 1997, and it's probably a little less efficient than it was then, but I know that we can improve. It's a matter of doing it at the right time, right? If we're going to grow our brew house, which is a perpetual topic of conversation, then we don't really want to get too small of a boiler right now and then have to replace it in a year. So those sorts of things. Do a lot of work with vendors and contractors in terms of Imagine Energy wants to put a solar array on our roof. And would that make sense? What would the right size be? That sort of stuff. And then the Energy Trust of Oregon, especially for those of you in Oregon and Southwest Washington, is a phenomenal resource. They are willing to build spreadsheets that blow mine away in terms of energy consumption and savings and that sort of stuff. And then, of course, the back end of that is that you get really awesome incentives to do efficiency upgrades and that sort of stuff. And then I do spend some fair bit of time working with Bruce, our marketing guy, to put together things like our annual sustainability report, which we hope to put out on our day. And I'll show you the next slide has a snapshot of what last year's looked like. And just making sure that our website and other outward-facing communications really do a good job of telling the story of sustainability at Hopworks.
So I think we'll start with Joe's question. Metrics are based off both your brewery and restaurant. I think you've split out all of those.
Yeah. So all the meters are split so that we separate the brewery from the restaurant. And so for the brewery, I do the per barrel or per gallon of beer metrics, and then for the restaurant, we do per $1,000 of sales. We don't have the bonus comp in the same way, so I just give them a monthly and quarterly report that says, hey, you're doing a little bit better per sales dollar or a little bit worse.
I would like you to look at REC solely right down.
All right.
I can't see the whole name, Brian. Do you have projections for biodigestion and spent grain and fuel cell technology? Did you look at those?
We have looked into it. What I understand about and what I know about biodigesters is, number one, they're wicked expensive. So we're kind of priced out at the scale that we're at. The cheapest one I think I've ever heard of was about $4 million, and that doesn't make sense for us. I'm going to forget the name of it now. But
Sierra
Nevada has it. Whitmer actually just got a grant, and they haven't put it in place yet, but for wastewater and waste grain. And it's going to be, I think Julia, their sustainability program manager, told me it would be about 2% of their waste stream for this small pilot project that they have a grant for. But yeah, lots of folks are looking into it. And I would love for somebody to bring me a project that would be affordable at our scale. But right now, it hasn't happened, although Cambrian, that's the company I was thinking about, that has been in the news for a couple of different, I think the Republic just put in a Cambrian system to digest their wastewater, and it spits out natural gas out the back end and practically pure, not quite potable, but usable, clean water you can either dump down the drain or use in non-potable places, or washing, first rinses, that sort of stuff. So there's definitely a few things, but right now it's really better for the bigger guys who have a lot of money.
Alaska Brewing.
Yeah.
Did you have an article on that?
They did, yeah. So they used to actually barge all of their spent grain down to Seattle and then ship it out to a dairy farm or other cattle farm. And they finally decided that was wicked expensive and not worth for them. So they had a company build them a system that would dry out their spent grain and then use it as a feedstock for their boilers. we reached out to them to see how they were feeling about that system, and I did hear that it's been rather problematic, and that's a very nice way of putting that's the PG version of the email we got back. But they're sticking with it. They're going to try and make it work. It sounds like maintenance has been kind of a bear with that system so far. You know, less than a year old, so not too new technology. So love to see that innovation, and I hope it. So I mentioned the sustainability report. This is a picture of one of the pages of it. We kept it really short. I think it came out to like 8 pages, and 3 of those were blank or practically so. But really, you know, these are the 3 major ideas that we want to get across. That we're really careful about our water use. That we're really careful about our landfill and solid waste, and then that we are carbon neutral as well. And then on other pages, there's some more information, and it's going to get a little bit longer. Like the font now.
Brian really likes that font.
Love it. Red October. That's what it's called. You can buy it.
Awesome name.
It's a pain in the tail to work with. You have to. It's all caps, otherwise it looks even weirder. But yeah, it's a nice font to work with for limited applications. It gets overwhelming really quickly. Yeah, move on. And then this next slide is just a little bit about what I do on a daily basis in terms of business analysis. So one of the things is I do a lot of analysis of sales data, looking for trends, looking for what we did last year that worked great, and you know, so maybe Rise of Red is one of our seasonals. Maybe if we started a month earlier or hang on to it for a month later, that would be a good idea based on the sales not really tapering off, just ending abruptly when we stop selling that year. So maybe we can squeeze out a little bit additional sales for another month. That sort of stuff. We're perpetually looking for growth opportunities. So one of the things I've brought to Hopworks is just let's put together a business plan. Let's do some demographics research and get a really good idea. If we're seriously considering a new location, why would it make sense? What are some concerns we might have? I'm sure you've probably heard of the SWOT analysis, and that's a part of our new location business plan going forward. Not just doing some analysis, so it's not a gut check that, hey, it feels like this location would work great. And I'm not saying that we've done that before. I will say that we've been sometimes luckier than we deserve to be in terms of some of the success we've had in locations. So just bringing some metrics and some analysis to that. And then, as I mentioned, budgeting projections is something.
Just to give these guys an idea, where, for example, have you been getting data on demographics for different neighborhoods?
Sure. The Bureau of Labor and Statistics is the one that do census every year, and you can find county and even zip code data. So that's a great location for that, especially for those of you that are students and have access to the library. There's all sorts of information you can find on industries and industry information and things like that. LexisNexis does great searches for business. You know, you can look for all of the other restaurants within a mile or 2 miles or 5 miles of a certain address, that sort of information.
So people are commenting on the audio. We checked on it, and it seems fine for some people. Sorry, Pat. What's going on with the audio?
Maybe it's just my voice is scratchy. Apologies. So yeah, let's go ahead and look at the next slide. So just to give an idea of a couple of the things that we do. So I exported from our sales system all of our sales from 2013, and this is just a snapshot of what that spreadsheet looked like. Go on to the next one. And so my whole goal is to turn that ridiculous spreadsheet into something that provides meaningful and useful information. And so this is one of the graphs that I took out of that sales spreadsheet. This is a picture of the liquid sales in 2015 by month. So we can see, no surprise that IPA does really a little bit better in the summer. But as I was talking about, maybe Rise Up Red, it could linger on. It kind of looks like it just dropped right off there in June. And so maybe we could get additional sales by extending that opportunity for some of our vendors in cans, in bottles, that sort of stuff. But really just providing information that I hope can help the brewery and the head brewer make the right decision in terms of what beer to make when, how much of it to make, and how much to sell at a given location and time. Yeah, a couple of questions, looks like, about these graphs. So right now we use micros in the restaurants, and that's a terrible program. I can't recommend it. It doesn't export to anything. So you basically do a lot of manual entry into QuickBooks, which is the finance software Hopworks uses. That's a really major pain.
So Micros is a POS, point of sale system, and we'll be talking a little bit about that in the restaurant week, which is our last week. It's just one of the many point of sale systems that you can buy if you're a restaurant. Or if you just have a tasting room, it's probably too expensive.
Yeah,
so you have to do it manually.
And I would definitely recommend consider. I shouldn't dog on micros. I know that there's obviously upgrades that we could purchase and that sort of stuff that would make it a little more functional for us. One thing I would suggest is go paperless from the beginning, because the amount of storage and things like that can get rather insane really quickly. So right now we get a burrito, we call it a burrito, and it's about that size, receipt every single day that we have to save for 3 years, because that's where people sign off on their credit card, and if we don't maintain that, somebody could dispute a charge for up to 18 months, and we run into real trouble and start the revenue we booked a year and a half. So go paperless from the beginning, get a tablet, and go there. That'll be but yeah, a lot of this analysis is manual in Excel. I know there's programs out there. We're looking at orchestrated beer. It does a lot of this reporting, has capabilities built in. We haven't sprung for that stuff yet, and so that's why we need a guy that's half-time business analysis to. It's interesting data mining, and I think we'd be doing it anyway, even if we have those reporting systems. So this makes sense, and we can really tailor the presentation to whatever the question.
I guess you're all Excel experts now after all these weeks.
Yeah, so Eric asked if there's a navigator, and this is all packages, liquids in any form of package, so kegs, cans, bottles.
At both locations.
This is all distribution, so within our brewpub as well as. So I guess I should have said that earlier on. We do distribute our cans and bottles and kegs to obviously the state of Oregon. We get Washington fairly well covered, especially Seattle area, but we're doing pretty well out in eastern Washington as well. We have a small foothold in British Columbia and Vancouver, and you can find our beer in Alberta because we have a big fan that ships them out. Our distribution network and all distribution.
I think this is quite helpful. We're also talking about forecasting. You can see how the products fluctuate throughout the year, particularly things like the lager, the yellow, and the IPA. You can see the difference, and then the overall volumes really. Most people think January is the slowest month. These guys are showing February to be their slowest month, but that could be year to year depending. But those are the typically in North America, bad months would be January and February.
And June is shockingly slow. It seems like when the kids get out of school and the vacation hits and people stop drinking beer, I don't know how that works, but there's a mad rush into the holidays.
Now again, this would be business dependent for those of you who are looking at this from the forecast side, because if you're a serious sports bar, you might have different outcomes in certain. Sports bar.
We're soccer fans. We love the Timbers locally, but that's about it. So Vancouver or Seattle. And that's really all the prepared information I had. So that's my contact information. Feel free to give a call or shoot me an email if you have any questions. Check out our website. Let me know if you find a typo on the sustainability page, or you think it's not clear about something, I'm always looking for feedback there as well.
Great. Okay, so now we have some interesting questions. Ben is asking you a value judgment. There's an amazing opportunity to open a brewery in California, lots of sales potential, lots of untapped market, but the water situation is seriously trouble there, environmentally and
Wow, you're asking me to
the god of
give you the
sustainability.
blessing. So, I think there's interesting trade-offs. People are going to drink beer one way or the other, and so the question you have to answer for yourself is, is it better off in a swimming pool or on a field full of lettuce than in a production facility or making beer that's going to be drunk locally? I would also argue that people are going to ship it if it's not made locally, and so the question then is whether or not it is better to ship beer from outside of the region than it is to use some of the limited water resources to make it locally. I think that's a pretty interesting trade-off. I just came back from Arizona, and it's mind-boggling to me that people can even live there, let alone have more golf courses per capita than anywhere else, and swimming pools for everyone. So, people are going to drink beer regardless of whether you're making it for them locally.
It might be considering then what you can do to prevent wastewater. You use any of that water for other purposes.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be my suggestion. Is if you're gonna build it, then put every spare dime you have into water efficiency, and obviously don't do landscaping, do xeriscaping, so every drop of potable water you bring into the building is going as efficiently as possible into. We do not get into California at all, unfortunately.
Have to come up here.
Yeah, sorry, Ann.
What ways can water be conserved in the cleaning process?
I think it's really important to think about clean in place systems, CIP systems. They are very efficient with their water use. Generally, they're a closed loop, so it'll hook up onto a spray valve on the top, built into the tank usually, and then it'll pull the water, the dirty water, out of the bottom, and it'll just cycle that through. That's really the most efficient process that you can have, and so you can clean 3 or 4 different tanks with the same 90 gallons of water. Unit built in, so you're pretty efficient, not losing by piping hot water around the place. Yeah, the cleaning process is really the most efficient way, or the clean in place of CIP systems are pretty effective. And that when you're done with those 4 tanks or whatever, you do want to start over with a new batch of water, so you would just dump that dirty water. Recently, so that Cambrian system that I mentioned would be a system that would filter or treat that clean and other wastewater that goes into the drain before it goes into the city. So again, 1,000 portion of the water is sewage. You're going to reclaim that for non-potable uses. I think I mentioned that a lot of cities are really moving towards charging pretty massive extra strength charge for those BODs, and also for total suspended solids, TSS. And so those filtration systems are great because they can knock those down close to potable water.
22s have direct print on the glass. That fits.
Yeah, so we have actually, as of a month, maybe 2 months ago, moved away from the screen printing on the glass. The eco-friendliness doesn't really change because that glass is all getting, well, we like to pretend or hope that it's all getting recycled regardless. So a screen printed glass bottle is just as recyclable as one with a label on it. It's pretty massive savings in terms of warehouse space. If you can imagine, if all of your labels are individually screen printed on, you're going to have to warehouse a pallet or multiple pallets of every single SKU that you have. So if we have 10 different liquids going out in 22-ounce bottles, that means we have to have a minimum of 22 glass on it. Now, with labels, you can have the same amount of glass that's all blank, and it can be used for whatever. We just have to change it more effective in terms of warehousing space. We lose a lot less money to inventory storage that way. Pretty good system. That was a trade-off as far as the aesthetics of it go. I would argue that the screen printed glass, it was a little nicer to look at, it was a little better in hand. But so the other things, I think the benefit. I'm sure there's folks that would argue that you know, paper label is better than a plastic label in some circumstances, but I would imagine that the recycler doesn't really care because it's getting cooked at whatever hundreds of degrees, so it probably just disappears as opposed to thinking about recyclability. One of the silly little questions that I'm trying to find is what do we do with the long roll of backing plastic, basically, or waxy paper, all the labels? I hate to, now that we're using labels, we're coming out with a dozen rolls of those every couple of weeks, and so is there a school that might want to use it for something? Finding ways, you know, as we aim for zero waste, finding ways to make sure that some of the stuff that isn't easily recyclable or compostable doesn't go down.
What would be the order you look at after?
Yeah, prioritize. I think I would suggest the 80-20 rule in terms of thinking about for bang for your buck, how can you make the biggest benefit. So, you know, I talked about single pass cooling. Get a heat exchanger. That's going to be huge. It's going to drop your water use by almost 50% just right off the bat. That's a big one. Anytime you can pay a 5% premium on a more efficient piece of machinery, whether it's a boiler or a label machine or a bottling machine, you might consider that being worthwhile because it's going to pay back over the long haul. And I hope that we're all going to be in business for more than that. Premium is definitely worth it. I talked early on about building efficiency, so make sure your building is as insulated as it can be. That's one of the most effective things you can do in terms of sustainability. You're going to keep the heat in the winter and keep the heat out in the summer. And it's for more pleasant as well as more efficient.
Do you use 8 barrels water, I assume, to get 1 barrel of beer? Any success in arguing that not all goes down?
Yeah, I know that the city of Portland allows a chargeback, and I would assume that most municipalities do. So basically, we send them a report of how much beer we produce every month, and that gets credited back on our wastewater bill. So that we don't exactly right. We don't pay huge fees for it.
This is Georgia.
I would definitely still contact your water provider. I'd be really surprised if they don't have some way that you can send them a copy of the report you sent to TTB. So it's very official, right? You're reporting to the Tax and Trade Bureau the volume that you produce in beer, and maybe something along those lines would be an effective form of showing them the volume that you're obviously not flushing down the drain. You don't have to.
If you have
Yep, at Hopworks we do a lot of impervious pavers and water retention things, so we get a charge back as well, credit back for not dumping things straight into the sewer.
any other questions? We have about 10 minutes.
And let's scroll back and see if I addressed Jay's question.
Oh, let's go. Oh, he wants to know your favorite beer.
My favorite beer, I'm kind of a homer, and even before I started at Hopworks, this Rise Up Red was my favorite. So this time of year is great. We really go from my three favorite beers in a row, Abominable to Rise Up Red, and our Cascadia Dark Ale Succession just came out yesterday. We had our release party at Land. So this is my favorite part of the year in terms of drinking beer.
John wants to schedule a visit. I think we'll probably go to Hopworks also in the immersion week.
Absolutely, yeah.
We like to have a party there, but we can't do parties there on Friday nights.
It's pretty slammed on that. If you come to the store, you could buy a mixed 4-pack, or to the pub. We just started marketing.
Boston, Georgia.
Okay, yeah, that'd be tough.
We'll have to send you some, Bob.
We'll have to send you some. You can buy a variety pack of bottles, 22s. But yeah, I don't think that's available.
Do you have any post-brewery water treatment?
We do rainwater collection off our rooftop that we use for landscaping, and the landscaping, the only thing we care about watering is our very small little hop farm on the back parking lot. Otherwise, we let things turn brown in the summer the way they're meant to do. Yes. So in terms of post-brewery treatment, I am actively seeking a vendor that can sell me something that makes the most sense for the brewery. We're really focused, obviously, on the things that the city of Portland is paying attention to, so that's the BRDs and TSS I was talking about. Then it'd be really great to get, like I said, a couple thousand gallons of post-processed water that's clean enough to do things like wash tanks down or first rinses, or washing, or do a lot of that. Right? We had some non-potable water to do that sort of stuff, and water our hops with. That'd be great. That gave us water.
We're going to go back to Jay's question, which she sent in. She'd like to know what kind of initial investment you had to make for your sustainability initiatives, and how, in the long run, Apple will save money.
Yeah, so I think I mostly addressed this, but yeah, I'll just reiterate that insulation is probably the biggest thing. And when we bought our building, one of the first things we did was add 4 inches of closed-cell foam insulation in the roof. Just to if we're paying to make cold air in the summer or warm air in the winter, it seems pretty foolish to let it escape out with cracks in the roof. That sort of stuff is really about all we really think about as a premium. In the beginning, on an ongoing basis, we definitely do pay a bit of a premium for organic hops and barley. We've done the math, and it works out to about 8 cents per pint. So if you think that you can sell a pint for $4.50 out of your pub, maybe you sell it for $4.60, and then you're making 2 cents more in margin, right? So it's pretty easy to capture that premium in organic value back to the pint price, or not. Eat that 8 cents and call it a price of doing the right thing. And that's where we landed. We don't want to raise the price. We want people to be able to drink organic beer for the same price that they can drink conventional beer. And maybe over the long run, we can convince them that organic is a good way to go.
Ben's kind of tying into what's the best way to bring up environmental sustainability.
Ben, I would definitely suggest, so the biggest hurdle is very often in the finance department. Nice when the finance department is the sustainability department. I imagine that's not the case for you. So think about, energy savings that can go together with sustainability, water savings, all that sort of stuff. I like to joke that it's really good for the planet that sustainability often coincides with saving money, right? Because you're being more efficient with the resource consumption. So if you can show your finance department a spreadsheet that says changing out the light bulb is going to have a simple payback that's less than 2 years, that's going to be something that you're going to make friends with, right? The finance guys are going to get behind it. And in the majority of things that we've done at Hopworks, it is under 2 years in terms of a straight line payback. Once in a while we get out to 5 or 7 years, but it almost always makes sense to pay a bit of a premium on a piece of equipment or a lighting upgrade, and especially, as I mentioned, when you're in Oregon or really any place that the federal government is interested in subsidizing efficiency. Kind of a no-brainer to spring that extra premium.
The payback analysis that we learned in this class, Christian used those things to use that approach. I think it was like a chiller. He was looking at a much more energy efficient chiller, even though it wasn't that old. It had a really rapid payback.
Yep,
In terms of energy. So those things are really easy to sell them on if you can get the details on savings on that. The breaking in. I'm pretty excited about that.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and we've done the verification on that chiller, and it's saving about 8% on our total electricity bill every month. So you can imagine that, I mean, that's in the thousands of dollars. That adds up pretty quickly. So if it was a $25,000 premium, it's not going to take very many months for that efficiency.
We skipped John's question. In your opinion, is insulation more viable than skylights?
I would say that there are some very efficient skylights out there, and the daylighting is definitely a big thing. Not very many breweries, certainly in the craft beer spectrum, are working, overnight shifts or graveyard shifts. So you're going to get a lot of benefit out of the skylight. Just make sure it's double paned and all that sort of stuff. So they're out there.
Here's an example. I've been to the Bacardi bottling plant in Mexico. They don't have. They have all it's a real factory, but high-end architecture. They have it's all naturally lit. It's really
one safety incident can blow a pretty plastic hole in the bed.
You get sun. It was sunny yesterday.
We just all you got you guys. You're just all snowed. It's part of the scam. We tell everyone it rains all the time, but it's really beautiful.
Okay, great. Any last questions, or we're done for tonight? All good. Yeah, John's in Alberta. He should be happy with it. Water.
Go on. Yes, in terms of that. Oh yeah, bull run. So we do. We have a carbon filter that aims to take basically the things that the city of Portland adds to it. That's mainly chlorine. So that we use basically straight bull run and there's a carbon filter to take those chemicals out, and then it goes straight into the hot liquor tank. Basically, they're pretty basic. That's what we use.
Okay, sorry, Brian. Didn't mean to skip over that. All right, well, let's give Nate a big hand for coming and visiting us tonight, and I'm sure he'll be around when we do the immersion. Thanks, guys. Thanks for showing up. And we have one last live session, which is restaurants with Charlie Devereaux, which will be in 2 weeks. So thanks for joining us, everyone.
Shoot me an email if you have any questions. Happy to talk.
Yes, Brian, I have to remember to call you. I forget. Email me. All right.